the rising influence of Arabs and the control of oil. Israel was created as a political proxy. It was never intended to continue existing, and at some point it's going to fall apart and be consumed by the sands of history, because it is not the one prophesied in the New Testament, Book of Revelations.
Well,
this is not the true Israel.
It says on my book, Mystery Babylon, and one of the reasons I put this book together and wrote it is because the Homeland Security put out an assessment. It's contained in my book, Mystery Babylon, The New World Order Unveiled. It's contained in there. And it says on the cover of my book, 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us of the coming of the New World Order as the eighth beast, the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they are Jews but are not. Jesus told us they were liars and of their father, Satan. And this is all contained in my book. Now, they went after Christian identity, and the Mossad, or the Zionists, have infiltrated the whole Christian identity movement and trying to turn it into a bunch of nonsense about a dual seed lines and all that. But it's the concept, or the idea, that my ancestors, your ancestors, were in the area of Jerusalem, in the area of Syria, and we walked across the Caucasus Mountains and became called Caucasians. And they don't want that. They don't like that, and that's so they are trying to go after and destroy any pride, and they're actually trying to destroy Christianity. And they managed to get the government to silence most of the preachers with their whole 501c3 scam. What about that?
Yes. You're absolutely right about false Jews, because there's two divisions. There's Ashkenazi and
Sephardi.
The Torah true Jews. The Torah true Jews have always lived in what's called the Arab world now, and they've gotten along with Arabs. There's Rabbi David Weiss, who's head of an organization in New York that actually advocates for the dismantling of Israel, because it's from the Jewish prophecy, it's a false Israel, and they want it dismantled so the true Israel can develop. It's Nutria Carthi, I believe it's the name of the organization.
That's right. And as an anti-Semitic publication, I put them on the cover of my magazine when they marched in New York City, or in Washington, D.C. I believe it was New York. New York they marched. 10,000 of them marched in the streets protesting the Zionist state of Israel. So what I've said is the elite are hiding behind the Jewish people, and they will sacrifice them as quickly as they'll sacrifice Christians if it forwards their cause. Let me give you another little quote here from 1935, July 27th, in the Jewish Daily Bulletin. There's only one power that really counts, the power of political persuasion or pressure. We Jews are the most powerful people on earth because we have this power and we know how to apply it. And that was Zev Jablonski, a Zionist leader, founder of the Irgun terrorist group in 1935.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly masters of it, and borrowing in through using corporations and political influence, campaign contributions. All of the politicians in Congress and Senate who even tried to expose what they were doing ended up either getting killed or forced out of office. Yeah. These are nasty, vicious people.
All right, now let's talk about the solutions here. This recovery process, I mean, I mentioned one of them, which is simply people working together, restoring the foundation of every civilization, the self-sufficient family farm. The attacks are on you. And by the way, this attack on our farmers started, back in the 30s, when they took our #1 cash crop, stole it from us, sent it to the communist in Red China, sent it to the communist in Russia, sent it to the communist in Mexico, and by the way, we've also got in my book Mystery Babylon the story of Operation Watchtower, which is the CIA and Mossad smuggling all of the drugs in through George Bush's partners when he was CIA director, Manuel Noriega, and it was flown from Panama by a gentleman by the name of, among others, by the name of Barry Seal, and it was flown into a nice little protected airport called Mena, Arkansas, where it was protected by...
I'm intimately familiar with that because one of the state investigators in Arkansas came to me privately to try and help him make sense of the evidence that he had, and that was not the only thing going on. There were actually, from the evidence that he gave me, I was able to pick out that there were actually 5 different intelligence operations going on out of the Mena airport. Some of them were way uglier than drug smuggling.
This was also the same time period and probably the same controlled operation as Iran-Contra. And if you go to the top of my website, you can learn that Iran wasn't our enemy. Back in when they occupied the embassy, they were in the process of throwing our guy out, the Shah of Iran. And of course, the Zionist funded, and our CIA funded Saddam Hussein to go to war with Iran. They killed 800,000 Iranians then, and if they'd killed, if you were in their place, wouldn't you occupy their embassy too?
Well, we have, there are a lot of people around the world that have legitimate grievances against us, and we don't listen to them when they try talking, so they quite frequently do something quite radical. But let me get back to one other thing that was going on in association with the operations out of Mena. There was actually a gun manufacturing plant set up in Arkansas that produced in the intelligence arena what are called sanitized weapons. They had no manufacturing identification on them, no serial numbers. You didn't even have to bother, filing them off because they didn't have any on them to begin with. And those weapons were going a lot of places other than to the Sandinista guerrillas. This was a manufacturing facility in Arkansas that produced thousands of untraceable weapons.
Okay, some other things here, and of course this is all being protected by Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he was getting cut of that. The drugs, essentially everything was going on through Mena that was making a profit. And there was one bizarre thing that even I was not able to make sense of, but one of the things that he had documented was a crash site where apparently whatever it was that crashed had treads like a tank. Something like a flying bulldozer or a flying tank or something. It was really a bizarre set of information. Something I've kept in the back of my head. I've never found anything, the government's classified inventory to explain that. but it was certainly something that actually occurred.
Now, let's get back to your side, the Post-Apocalypse Recovery Project. I mean, we haven't quite hit. They haven't, it's starting to become more apparent. I mean, they're not only going after people for drugs now, they're going after people that are growing, tomatoes in their backyard. They don't want you being able to feed yourself. They want meters on your wells, and they are poisoning us. I believe that they may have already killed more Americans than they did in the Soviet Union. 60 million white Christian Russians were killed in the Soviet Union. And they are doing the same thing here. If you add up the abortions, if you add up the chemtrails, if you add up the GMO foods, if you add the... more people have died from pharmaceuticals than all of the cocaine and heroin in the world. There's more people died here. And, that's not counted as murder. But I've speculated that just perhaps we've actually been in the biblical description of Armageddon for the last 100 years, and the press didn't tell us about it.
Well, that may very well be true, but what you're describing, the term for it is black medicine, and that term is used in the intelligence arena quite often, but it's not something used in the public awareness. But these are examples of black medicine where you use the corruption of medical services to kill people. Another example of black medicine would be the corruption of that doctor in Pakistan to set up the raid on the latest invasion of Osama bin Laden, which he probably has been dead for decades, but whenever they need a boogeyman, he's suddenly there again. Getting back to what you were talking about, the Post-Apocalypse Recovery Project, what I focus on in particular are what you need to know to rebuild industrial processes, like how to make charcoal, how to make coke, the type of coke that's used as a fuel for making steel. And one thing that I cannot emphasize enough is, after the collapse, you're not going to be able to get batteries for your calculators, and you need to have constructed in advance or either purchased a slide rule type device so that you can do mechanical calculating for engineering projects and stuff to rebuild things. You really need to do that in advance, and I have links to several websites with plans for building slide rules, either linear or circular. There's one set of plans where you can build a slide rule that will fit in one of the plastic CD boxes, and the spindle in the center is what everything rotates around. But I cannot emphasize that enough, that you really need to have some mechanical device for doing mathematical calculations that you will need to do for building projects and engineering and working out things like hydrology pressure.
In my Plans for Liberty villages around the country, and I said you could do this in a square block in the city, was to grow our own food, non-genetically modified, and to generate our own energy from everything God gave us, which is the wind and the sun. And if we did that, we wouldn't need the government or the banks. We wouldn't need any of them, and we could survive. Could you dwell on that for a couple of minutes here?
Well, certainly. And when you look at some of the religious societies like the Amish and the ones that live in Pennsylvania in particular, they have incredible engineering in some of the things they do for like pumping water and wind power, converting wind power to pumping water out of the ground. I actually saw one farm where they had rigged it so that water was being pumped into a box in their kitchen, kind of like the icebox style creation, and the water was used to cool it and turn it into a simple refrigerator. It wasn't as didn't have the cooling capacity of a mechanical refrigerator, but it did help preserve food for longer periods. So you can look at some of these other subcultures, that's the sociological term for it, that have relied on, continue to rely on mechanical devices, and done a lot of engineering that would be highly adaptable for survival and recovery after a collapse.
What do you see? Do you have a time schedule on this or anything? Do you when they talk about the world ending in December 21st, I don't believe that's going to happen, but I would certainly get my hopes up that the world they're talking about is the banksters' world, not us. And like you said, there are survivors from any catastrophe. There are survivors, and it's just how you prepare about it. If you can work together with your family, with your neighbors, with your county and your town, then you've got a chance. You've got a chance.
Yes, that's exactly true. Yes. I've been asked questions like this several times, and especially with regard to when if I can state a time when the death squads are going to be implemented, but as best I can ascertain, there's no set day and time like the D-Day invasion. It's going to depend on a threshold of some set of circumstances or a situation that these people have deemed the critical factor for needing the application of death squads. So I don't think you can say that it's going to happen tomorrow at 11:07. It's whatever set of circumstances these people are freaked out about, and when those circumstances or events occur, that's when they will turn loose the death squads. And that's another reason why it's important to get legislation passed in your individual state prohibiting the operation of death squads, so that when they do turn these things loose, your state police will have responsibility for intercepting them and keeping them off your doorstep. If they get to your doorstep, you've already lost.
Now, we've got people out there like Sheriff Richard Mack, who I'll try to get back on my show here shortly. He's organized some of these sheriffs into constitutional sheriffs, and we've had states that have said, like Texas, that said to no UN observers in here. So there is some progress being made. Now, these death squads, they're already here, and I was there in Tucson when one of them implemented using marijuana as an excuse. They broke into somebody's house, a veteran, who was walking down the hallway with a rifle on safety. They shot him 40 times. At least.
Yes. And that's exactly a classic example of why why it's important for you to understand that your doorstep should not be your first line of defense, because if they get close enough to cross that with the firepower that exampled in this case, you're toast.
They've done this over and over again.
You've got to set up a line of defense further away than your front door.
Again, this is all Liberty Villages, but as soon as somebody goes into a county meeting or a town hall meeting, if they start talking about this, they're called conspiracy theorists, they're called Zionists, they're called racists, they're called everything under the book, and they're telling the truth. The people are understanding what's going on. And by the way, you mentioned these chips. They've already created them. They got enough of them, and a friend of mine, I was friends with Aaron Russo, a Jewish film producer who ran for governor of New Mexico. I put him on the cover of my magazine because I thought he was qualified, and I've known him since his film Mad as Hell and Ain't Gonna Take It Anymore came out. They killed him because he had a conversation he published and put it up on the internet, a conversation with Nicholas Rockefeller, and where he asked him, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And the goal was to have everybody in the world have one of these chips, which I call the mark of the beast. So, and if you don't do what they say, you lose all your benefits, you lose your income, you can't get any money out, and you can't buy food. And now, actually, they've got patents from on these adapted chips that have a little bit of cyanide in them, and it can be released on demand or on command.
Yes.
So this is part of the death squad. This is part. They intend to kill 90% of the world's population. They wanted a manageable 500 million, and that's 499 million slaves and 1 million elitists living in the lap of luxury, I believe.
Well, I have one of the things that you just mentioned. For those of you who know sheriffs that are sympathetic or constitutionalists, or understand that things are not working the way they're supposed to, get them a copy of this model legislation and the article on what Americans need to know about death squads. They might actually be able to put some of it to use.
Give me that. Give me that location. Communities. Give me that location again. www.
Well, the easiest to read in terms of formatting. If you do a Google search for what Americans need to know about death squads, it's hundreds of thousands of hits. But the easiest to read posting, I think, is probably on the PPJ Gazette.
Repeat that.
PPJ. I'm sorry?
P as in Paul, PPJ?
Yeah. PPJ. Papa Julio.
Okay.
Gazette, and then add in what Americans need to know about death squads, and it'll, Google will take you right to it. It'll be the first one that pops up on the list.
PPJGazette.com?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. All right, sure.
And get that to the local sheriffs that are in these organizations, they're constitutionalists, wherever you can get it, because this needs to be done immediately. I didn't come out of the woodwork and make myself a target for this for no reason. This is really an urgent problem, and there's still time to put up a defense further away than your front door.
All right, I'll put that up for a link. Now, this show will be on my website, freeamerican.com. The films, the 2 30-minute segments here, and my guest is Roger Brown, Post-Apocalypse, a Recovery Project. These films will be up on YouTube, but they'll all be linked at the Free American, and I'd really appreciate getting all this information out. The libertarians you know, I have had problems in the past with the Libertarian Party because I'm not particularly fond of their idea of open borders. I think that's from the cause of infiltration, and they barred me from some of their events and wouldn't let me speak at some of their functions. So I mean, they go in and they infiltrate. I mean, they certainly infiltrated the Tea Party. I mean, Sarah Palin wanted to bomb Iran. She was suggesting we bomb Iran. And what the open border thing, I mean, you know, if you're in favor of open borders, just open your door, take the locks off your door, and put a sign out there that we don't like, there's no guns in this house.
Yeah, come and rape us.
And what did
that's not a prudent course of action.
What we've got a few minutes left, couple of minutes left here. You've read Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I've said I identify a lot with Solzhenitsyn and Ezra Pound because they've tried to do the same thing for me, for bringing guests like you to the public eye in my magazine and on my radio shows.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I would also encourage people to go to my website because there are tons of other things on there. It's www.thesociologistcenter.com, where you can just do a Google search for James Roger Brown, and it'll take you to my website. But I've got one page, the Child Slave Trade Project page, that has tons of documentation about how the organized crime and organized science fraud operates through government agencies and programs. You can download free the entire congressional evidence book I wrote on organized crime and organized science methods and procedures, which actually shows you how they operate through government agencies and programs, including clauses that are put in contracts to third-party contractors for doing things like filing grant reimbursement applications for the child protection agencies.
All right, the sociology, what was the second part of that?
It's www.thesociologistcenter.com. And another thing that your readers or your listeners or both might be interested in is the Internet bibliography for James Roger Brown, which is one of the buttons on the first page. I've been writing political analysis and commentary for several decades. One editor rated me as one of the top 10 on the Internet, but you can certainly look at all the analysis I've written about things like, like even George Bush and earlier things. Also, my master's thesis, which was a cross-national study of intelligence operations in World War II, is on the Internet bibliography page. You can link to it and download it and read it, or just read it online. But that's quite informative because no one else has ever done that before or since.
All right, we will do that. I will have that link up on my site in a few minutes here. And appreciate any help. What they've tried to do with me, they haven't been successful in killing me yet. It's not without trying. But they have managed to try to break me financially. They have tried. I am limited. You can't get my show at Office Depot, at Intel or Intuit or